Good afternoon, LinkedIn friends, HubSpot Nation. Welcome to another episode of Let's Build Your Audience in HubSpot with Mr. Joshua Oakes. How you doing, man?
I am doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good. Doing good. I'm hoping, um, is this like this MECHA uh reminds me of like mechanical and AI and like robots. So I'm hoping for some kind of display like that. We're gonna build like a Voltron today. Is that what we're doing?
I did not prepare any Voltron imagery, but that is not too far away from what we're doing. Uh, MECHA is the acronym that I settled on for this strategy after many different attempts and evolving it over time. But it also, I'm a child who really liked Robotech. That's my MECHA um, touch point,
There you
and
go.
the giant, in this case, piloted robots, which I think makes them not robots technically, in my opinion. Piloted mechas are complex mechanical, electrical, hydraulic systems that all have to work together to produce outcomes that look organic, at least in Robotech. These big mechs walk and move in ways that mimic human movement and behavior. But if you break them down, there are a lot of complex systems all working together to produce an outcome that you can't really differentiate, hopefully, from a sort of natural organic movement or outcome. And that is a great metaphor for developing systems that will allow you to market and sell effectively to produce outcomes with your customers. And the MECHA, the components of the MECHA that we use in this framework are the lists, and they can be contact or company lists. They'll include deal lists often that uh, comprise those systems that work together differently. Hydraulic, electronic, mechanical systems all interrelate but are very complex in and of themselves. And if we have a clear strategy of how those things work together, we can produce an outcome for our audience that gets them where they need to be without it feeling like a big machine full of clunky, not really effectively integrating systems. So that's what we want to try to do today.
I'm excited to do that because it reminds me of an in-person client session that I had this morning where um, uh, the sales leader said we get calls and people try to get quotes and orders and they expect us to know their whole history and everything about them. And it's hard for us to see who they are and what they bought last time. And so we got to dig through all the stuff to to be to even be present on that call in the first place. And so what you're describing, I know that's definitely one of the outcomes that we're hoping. And like when we can just be people, human beings on the other side of the phone having a conversation because we don't have to wade through all of the data, all of the tools, all the spreadsheets. And we just look at a contact record and can see that we've interacted them in the ways that they expected to be and they've followed a journey and they never got the wrong things at the wrong time and there was no friction. So I'm excited to chat about this. I always know there's lists are one of the ways that the most uh, we'll say effective HubSpot practitioners, like they have some very impressive list infrastructure, if you will, that supports everything. So I was excited to see. At the same time, there's not a lot of frameworks out there about how to do this. I don't think so. When you brought this up, I was excited, but I have to ask, have you have you published it anywhere
I
like
have
MECHA?
not. I have not
Because
published it anywhere.
what we're gonna find out is how good Claude is at assuming what MECHA stands for.
Oh yeah.
Because as I was preparing for this episode, I took the description from you and the screenshot, which doesn't say what the letters stand for.
Right.
And I asked Claude for a post, and it gave me what the letters stood for.
Okay.
And they weren't bad. They were pretty spot on, I think. So
All right. Well, that'll be
we're gonna
fun to
see how
see.
common sense these are
Yeah, see
at the end of
Claude's
the day, I
what
think.
Claude's bingo, how much Claude thinks like I think.
Yeah.
Your illustration though really hits another aspect of this conversation on the head, which is I've had a lot of conversations with I work most with sales and marketing leaders, secondarily ops or people who have had ops put on their plate. And somebody who has not worked in an organization that um, is already using HubSpot previously, or who has not, doesn't have a lot of experience like running a strategic sales or marketing organization, will often end up asking basically like what should our segmentation strategy be, or uh, what what data do we have about our customers, or um, some form of like these exploratory discovery, like what do we even have to work with, um, questions as they are trying to, they come in and there's a new leader in this organization, they're trying to get the lay of the land. Um, or they've often worked in organizations that use older approaches to this, and they have there's, we don't need to name names, but there's some email platforms out there that essentially treat each subscription as a silo. And so if you have one person who is subscribed to both like your informational newsletter and product updates, that those are completely different um, data sets, and never the twain shall meet. And so, they'll say like, oh, well, if somebody comes off this list, then they're lost. It's like, no, they're not lost. We have them in HubSpot. It's fine. And so like the a lot of, from low level to high level leaders, not high level leaders, but there's a lot of scenarios that I've run into and that I think that people will run into, where the not having a framework like this, or not coming in and imposing some other strategic framework around list construction and segmentation, makes it really hard for people to know what they can do, right? And so let's throw our slides up on the screen. So the uh, it's really easy for a leader to say like, oh, we have a near-term gap that we need to make up, or we have an opportunity. And so let's send an email campaign to all of our leads or all of our stalled leads. Those are um, those can be, you can often drill down and get a better articulation of what that means. But when it comes time to build the campaign or the email or the workflow, you have to answer highly tactical questions. Okay, does a stalled lead mean somebody who has not yet been identified as an opportunity, but has interacted with one of our lead magnets, but not had any activity for 60 days? If you ask a leader who's given you a mandate like this, that question, they'll say, sure. And then you say, well, does it mean people who are identified opportunities that have a proposal and have not yet responded to that proposal for 14 days? And they say, oh, yeah, sure. And then suddenly this stalled leads is basically, snowballs into everybody. And, in sales and marketing, we talk about like right message, right person, right time. And we need to send an email campaign because it's the end of the quarter to all of our leads, is none of those things. It's our timing, our message, our person, right? But if we want to be strategic, a mandate or a discussion like this box on the right, where we identify who the audience is specifically. Like this, in this case, we're kind of saying Mad Lib style, what's their role, what segment or persona do they belong to, what actions have they taken or milestones have they reached, and uh, what um, what like recent activities might qualify them for this message. And uh, this comes from, this is where you can look at a point in your funnel or pipeline or customer journey or path to value, whatever, and say, okay, we've identified something we want to do for these people in this place. Let's get targeted, right? One of these is really easy to ask for. One of them is not as easy to ask for, often just because it takes an hour, if you don't already have lists in place, to even figure out, like, well, how many people are we talking about? We were hoping to move the needle, and we drill down on a hypothesis, and we discover, oh, that's 20 leads, in and we close 500 deals a month. Like, okay, well, that's not nothing, but it's also not what we were looking for. So to even be able to have these conversations, you need to know what's possible. And in order to make it effective and fast, you need to have these things at your fingertips, and they need to be tailored for your business. And that's the point of MECHA. It's not a prescriptive framework that's going to tell you exactly the lists that you need to build. These are the categories of lists that you need to adapt for your processes and then fill in. So MECHA is milestones, engagement and activity, communication, hygiene, and I use audience profiles. If you want to use personas or something like that, then it's MECPA, I
I'll
guess.
have to I'll have to check at the end. I
Yes, we'll
think
see
I
what.
think Claude was 2 for 5 here with the E and the
Okay.
A. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, your last slide is interesting because even though you're finishing the sentence in the who, right? It's easy to see when the left happens versus when the right happens, and it's when we actually finish the sentence with what we think needs to happen for the business. So
Right.
it's like end of month, and we need to send an email campaign to get more deals or to grow revenue very quickly. It's like, okay, just send to everybody, like ship it to everybody
Right.
versus, we need to send an email campaign to, provide a better experience, educate some people, like be proactive in any way at all. We want to obviously do the right side. Um, so that just
Right.
came to mind as I was looking at this.
Yeah. It gives you the at least it gives you the scaffolding to be proactive. Whereas, if all you have is
Right.
lists of life cycle stages, you don't have a lot to go on. You've got an uphill battle
Yeah. And
there.
in reality, if you are in the position where you need some quick wins, uh, you need to have the right side is going to give you the quick wins, like not the left side. So,
Yeah, exactly. Um, so let's really quickly walk through slightly more detail on these, and we'll talk about each of them and why they are. But milestones are obviously, where are they at on their recognized stages of path to value, which is what we talk about within the Who First context. It's not life cycle stages or deal stages. It can be those things, but we also are going to talk about named milestones that are part of a decisioning process that need to be included there. So lists that enumerate, they may not be linear, but if you wrote them on index cards and threw them on a table, you could probably roughly sort them in order, and they indicate progress, milestones through the decision. Engagement and activity. Um, these are fun lists because of some of the quirky aspects of HubSpot properties and how they are named and calculated, and the quirks around like meetings and booking and things. But it's people who have engaged with content or taking tracked actions. We'll detail those in a little bit more. We'll go into those in more detail. Uh, Communication is both their preferred or demonstrated channels, the subscription types they're opted into. This is where we think about marketing versus non-marketing contacts. Hygiene is there. You have some standard kind of lists in this case, like bounced emails, bad emails. Uh, are we missing first name or last name? Uh, some of those kinds of things are pretty clear, straightforward. They're not built in, but most admins build some of those things. They either build them immediately upon getting access to a new portal, or uh, eventually discover, they co-evolve into recognizing that you need lists like that. But you will have other specific lists for your organization around hygiene. And the last one is, how well do we know them? Do we have profile information around these folks that we can use to tailor content? So if you don't have to put these in folders like this. Uh, organize and name your stuff however you want. But these are the things that we are looking for. So uh, let's uh, let's drill down and look at milestones first. So as I said, um, milestones generally, are going to track over time. They are at least linear because that's how we perceive and measure time. But there are things that we can recognize and track in HubSpot, like life cycle stages, deal stages, and then if you have any sort of onboarding or success stages or phases, whether those are a custom object that you're using for onboarding or a ticket pipeline for onboarding, or stages in your success, like in renewal or not. Those are all critical things to have as lists because they are critical functions of your business. I guess my slide maybe is a little bit hard to see here, but it's important to include in your milestones overlays that indicate people have reached or passed through the traps and gates that await them on their journey to a purchase decision. So you can see some of these in the top right that were pulled from a from a B2B sales context where it was a multi-stakeholder sale and often triggered by RFPs. The company operated a little bit differently, so they have this bought into approach, which is tracked at the deal level. That it's a value judgment by the account manager, but they flag, do we have a shot at this deal, because they recognize our approach is a little bit different than our competitors. Everyone might say that. It was actually true in this case. And if you don't buy into that mindset, it's not going to make progress. And then Decision Matrix was a tool that they use working together with the prospect to determine their needs. So these don't make sense to have stages of the funnel because often a decision matrix would be done at a trade show, standing in a booth, like with a piece of paper, and then you enter it right after that, when the lead walks away. So it could be your first interaction. But it may, if you get an inquiry through the website, it might be much later. So you don't want to set those up in a scenario like that as stages in a deal pipeline, but those are milestones that need to be hit and can be hit in any order at any stage except for the very late stage of the sales funnel. So you need a list for each of those that you can use to determine, like, should we send a update about the decision matrix? We've got a new version of the decision matrix or something like that. Who should we send it to? Well, don't send it to prospects in the deal pipeline who have already submitted it, because it's counterproductive and that's not what it's designed for in the process. But if you have a deal in the pipeline, you want a list of deals that have not reached, or you want to be able to get to deals that have not reached that milestone and the contacts associated with them so that you can send that email, right? So that a list in that scenario wouldn't be, these are folders, but would be contacts associated with deals with no decision matrix. And the decision matrix was a field property on the deal with a calculated true false, right? And so it's uh, it's a pretty straightforward list that uses the association. So we can, if we needed to, we could triangulate against deals that are in or past a certain stage that don't have a decision matrix, and use that list to throw a number on a dashboard so that a sales review can say, hey, why do we have all these people in contract that haven't done the decision matrix yet? What did we skip, right? Um, Things like that. So every uh, definitely life cycle stages and deal stages. You need a list for every one of those, and you need to identify your critical non-stage milestones for you and your prospect and have lists for those. You don't need to use them for every single thing that you do, but if you have those lists, then you can start to triangulate on all the people uh, with their on where they are at kind of in the decisioning process. And then that gives you the ability to answer with like joining a few lists. Hey, how many people do we have in that stage of the pipeline or who are going to close this quarter who have or have not done X on their journey? We can find that number out real quick, right?
So primarily, this helps us solve for the right time part of the
Correct.
equation.
Yep. And engagement and activity. This one is pretty straightforward. I don't know about anybody else. I fielded a lot of requests for things like, and this is where there is the new, the
Journey.
no, the relative dates in list filters that just rolled out
Oh yeah.
in HubSpot.
Yep.
So, the number of times I've been asked, like, oh, give me a list of all the people who have visited the website in the last week or something like that. A lot of times, what people mean is, who ask that is, even if they haven't converted in the past, which obviously is a violation and we can't do. But having lists, standing lists with where you've defined the business rules of like what does recent activity or site visits or tracked activity mean? Like they haven't opened or clicked on any sales or marketing emails in the last 30 days. Those are lists that you can build and maintain, right? Um, or on the affirmative side, if you have a handful of lead magnets that are part of your process, well, who are all the people who have downloaded a given lead magnet or accessed a given tool? You don't want to put that out there and then track interactions, but not be able to know who that is. When you build something like that, you set up a dynamic list of everybody who has whatever your engagement is, right? Download, interaction, received a score, etc. Um, a lot of these, you'll end up using them for triangulation, but when you have an email health issue, for example, with your marketing email, well, go look at contacts who have who you've emailed in the last whatever 60 days, but have no clicks of those marketing emails. Um, you can start to drill down and again triangulate by combining the lists. Um, and we'll talk about this on the next in the C of MECHA, feeding into your marketing non-marketing contact calculation. But all of these properties and more are built in. Um, the So identify the ones that are critical. Like if you're not running your website on HubSpot, you must just run your forms, then you don't really need the like people with no site visits in 30 days list. Um, but you have a lot of like good signals that are often buried because things like, email opens on a contact who's opening a ton of emails. That just doesn't get surfaced anywhere. It's not in any of the default card views on a contact. There's no alerts. But every time I set one of these up, we inevitably go in and find, well, A, that employees are the top email openers. So we exclude those from the list. But B, that there are people that we didn't know are opening every single email, right? And there's you don't get simple visibility into that kind of thing. You can
Yeah.
start to grab your most engaged contacts and figure out like, okay, what do we need to be doing to serve these people better?
Yes.
Um,
Separating the signals from the
yes,
noise.
the I think I said we would talk. We probably don't have time to go in detail about this, but there's a lot of tricky properties here. This is an area where uh, the teams working on the different features, the seams there, kind of show where there's properties, for example, where the names are present tense versus past tense, uh, I forget which one it is, but and there are some gotchas around the meeting, the last meeting, campaign of last meeting book meetings booking tool. I forget what the name of the property is, but there's the it distinguishes between internal meetings scheduled by users versus meetings booked through the form. So when you are building, figuring out what kinds of activities and engagement you want to track, have that HubSpot default properties um, knowledge base article up and cross-reference it as you're doing it. But I've never got access to a portal that didn't have a gap in this coverage in some way. You um, Marketing emails are the engagement activities that are the most likely, in my experience, to have lists to monitor. But you can get that same visibility on sales emails. You can track all kinds of other activities here. All right, communication. So this is the how we talk to them. Um, the marketing and non-marketing contacts are also a default that everybody should create and are not. At least last time I got access to a squeaky clean new portal, didn't have like built-in lists configured, but have a list for marketing and non-marketing contacts, as well as the about to relegate. I call somebody going from marketing to non-marketing relegation and from non-marketing to marketing promotion. Um, the There's a property that's marketing contact status until next update. That's if you add that to a list, that's going to be the people that are have been flagged as non-marketing, but your monthly cycle hasn't hit yet. So the if you have a list, for example, of I need to send an email, or not a list, if you get the mandate that we talked about at the top of the call of I need to send an email campaign to stalled leads. Well, uh, you may be surprised to find that you have contacts associated with deals that are non-marketing contacts. And so if you try to email them, then it's not going to go out, right? So um, having your list of non-marketing contacts and then in your hygiene, which we will talk about next, contacts with open deals who are on your non-marketing contact list. That's something that you need to fix, right? Um, Having lists for all of your top level opt-outs and then unsubscriptions from all of the subscription types that you have set up in HubSpot. You just need these all for reference. For one thing, to you can look at the activity tab and see the change over time, right? If your opt-outs and unsub lists are growing, you can also add those views reports to a dashboard. Uh, it's fine for them to grow, but they shouldn't be spiking. If they are, then you've got a problem that you need to look into. And then having the affirmative opt-ins, especially if you use double opt-ins, lists for all of your subscriptions. It's way easier to manage sending a email associated with a certain subscription type to your opt-in list rather than having a list of like all leads and contacts, and then you send a subscription to that list, and it only goes out to like 20% of them because they're not opted in to that subscription, right? So you want to control and funnel people into your opt-in lists and send to those rather than just shooting in the dark and, you know, adding 5 lists to an email when you send it out and hoping you got everybody.
Yeah. And then wondering where email health
Right.
isn't
Why
great.
it's so low. Either either it's great, but your email is only going out to a small percentage of the people that you thought. You know, you grab a 10,000 list, a 60,000 list, an 80,000 list, and you send it out, and it's like, oh, 7,500 sends, and you're like, I don't. Like, are they all unengaged contacts? Which you should have in your engagement activity. Um, no, they're just, there's only 7,500 people opted in to that subscription, right? And you
Yeah.
have no visibility to that. See, it's the only way that I know of to get visibility into that. Oh. Hygiene. This is the thing that most admins figure out pretty early, which is you need to get visibility onto the worst of the worst things in your portal. Um, the all contacts with bounces, all contacts with quarantine email. There is I think the property is valid email is the name of the property, or email is valid, true, false. A list of those. Contacts with missing first name or last name, or with no value in the company property and non-associated with a company. This is what the extent of your hygiene lists looks like. What's considered bad data is going to be highly contextual for the stage of your company is at, the industry that you're in. I'm increasingly seeing, not maybe recommending yet, but seeing a lot of uh, bad data lists, including like, look, if they're on any free email provider, we're just going to, we'll maybe send them one email. And if they reply, then sure. But otherwise, we're just not going to, we're going to put them in has a free email provider list, and we're not going to email them anymore. We're going to send them as non-marketing, particularly if to name names in this case, particularly if it's an Outlook email, which are just overrun with spam. So these having these lists are you can use them as exclusion and unenrollment criteria for your automations. You can use them as suppression lists for your sends and for other lists. But like, you don't want to run, if you've got a bad email address that hasn't been looked at, you probably don't want to burn any of your enrichment credits wherever you're doing it with that email address, right? So like, these would all keep things out of whatever you're doing. And then if you if you if you have a real problem with spam, you may want to have lists that are high quality or good records. You usually don't need lists of all good contacts, but you may want hygiene lists around deals with all required sales related properties. Like, you don't need to require deal name or something like that. But if you have those properties around like the decision matrix and buy into the approach, right? You would want to have a standing list that's like all open deals that meet all of those criteria right now, because those were the things that meant, because it also included stakeholder identification and other things. But if they have all those things, then they have no uh, categorically identified buying blockers, right? So those folks are actually systematically ready to buy, even if they aren't ready for that decision yet, right? Like if you have requirements like that, you want to have a go-to list that has all of those like green check marks, so that anytime you are doing an email campaign or a workflow or cleanup or using for deal tags, you just grab the list and you're not double checking, double guessing all of your properties every time. And
Makes
our last
sense.
one, the audience profile. Uh, I talk about this a lot. You could think about it, also think about it as persona if you're not familiar with terminology. But this is how we get right message, to refer back to the top of the call there. And we just have you can use the built-in persona property on contacts in HubSpot. Uh, it's it's a little quirky. You could create your own as well. If you're doing this against companies, then I, I often either roll up, um, or use a score from the decision contacts or stakeholders associated with the company or with the deal, or a combination of type and other properties to kind of neck down, right? So that you have a list that, if you, here's the thing that I've encountered before, if you have like an annual compliance cycle and you are providing updates or information to your customers, and the requirements are different based on a geography or industry or a combination of those things, which is what I'm actually describing. It's a market size, segment, geography, state level, some other property. There are like 5 properties, and those actually formed a pretty good profile. Uh, Largely firmographic, so it wasn't as good for tailoring messaging, but when you have to provide that update, it's a business process. It happens annually with a semi-annual check-in. So don't build a list every time or try to make an index page where you then manually enroll people in a workflow or whatever. Build that list of those that comprise all of those properties, right? In this case, we're talking about audience profile. So when we, let's flip over, yeah, here. So when we get a request, like we want to send an email campaign to stakeholders at a particular segment who are qualified and who have or haven't recently engaged with some aspect of the sales and marketing process, we can run through our lists and say like again, this is a Mad Lib. So let's say that who have downloaded I'm going backwards through our bullet points. They've downloaded a particular late stage magnet, right? PDF, buying guide PDF or something like that, that's targeted at late stage buyers, who are qualified and are in our particular segment, stakeholders. So like maybe we're filtering on job titles there. We have lists. Job titles are a pain in the neck to deal with, obviously, but and are opted into our whatever mailing list we have associated with our lead magnet. Then we can just grab our lists, right? We're not building a list property by property, trying to figure out how many people are even in this audience. We are, the first thing I would do is for that enrollment list for our workflow here would be our marketing contacts are opted in to our subscription type, are on our lead magnet list, And then if I have any other life cycle stages or milestones I want to tack onto that, I can. And then I can send my email to those folks, and I would build that email message. If I don't need to filter on my audience profile, then I would just use dynamic content, smart content modules in the email to say, send this version of the body to my first rodeo, send this version of the body to bigger, better backup, and then send this version of the body to I need a breakthrough, right? We didn't have to create a list for each of those people. We actually, that list takes 2 minutes to build, and you get personalized content for all of your audience out of it for a pretty sophisticated query or request from your marketing leader. Uh, you can do it all super fast because you just have, sat down, thought about your MECHA, what lists you need to describe those things, the milestones. Uh, let's
Engagement and activity.
go back here. You got milestones, engagement, activity, communications, hygiene, and audience profile. If you have, and you don't even have to be like 80-20 complete on these. Hygiene is the easiest, and that's the one where you want to be pretty, uh, want to get thorough first. But if you identify like, what are my three biggest milestones? What are the most critical engagement activities I want to track? It's probably A, marketing emails, and B, sales emails, and then C, whatever is relevant for your business. Um, Communication, do you have any? A common one in there is people who do not want SMS, they either opt out or they have said, I do not want to be texted either through systems or verbally. So, okay, email or call. Um, and, with a handful of basic lists in each of these categories, the this you enable these really sophisticated requests that deliver value for the organization because they deliver the right value for the people you are talking to. And you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time you want to send an email. And if you lay that matrix out uh, for a leader who doesn't have a concept of the map of your segmentation, it starts to make sense super fast. You can almost pick one card from each category. Who do you want to send to? Have done this, haven't done that, and you can construct a list just as fast. So,
Yeah. And that's where like what we're not seeing here is just job title
right.
or just company size
Yeah.
or just industry, right? So these all work together to to get the who right,
Right.
the right person, right? So some of them for right message, some of them for right time, all of them work together for right person. Um,
Yes.
and this is, I think we've said this many times before. This is what you're paying for HubSpot for. Like,
Yes.
if in almost every leader I've ever met wants the answers to these questions, like just how are we doing with all of these groups? Like obviously hygiene is definitely an administrative list, but every other one, like I've heard all the questions. And as you're going through it, I have to imagine just the ability to segment like this and then display the right information to the right time to the people that are using the system, like to highlight, oh, yeah, this is how we're doing with this group. It's gone from this to this,
Right.
right? So not only is it easier to, communicate at the right time with the right people, it's easier to show how we're doing with those groups that are, sometimes really important to the organization when the business goals align with what you're actually doing in HubSpot.
Right. Yeah. And almost the only, generally speaking, these are all multi-property lists. And so where I'm going with this is they also, it seems like, well, I'm going to create all these mecha lists and there's like 5 or 10 lists in every category or whatever. Audience profile is the only, in my experience building these, is typically the only category of lists that tend to be one or maybe two properties. So most of the other ones have a lot of clauses, right? Like how you define and manage bad email addresses. If you just use the invalid email, true, false, um, maybe that's a one list, a one clause list, but might have bounce an email address quality signals back from your email cleansing provider, zero bounce or never bounce, that you would include in lists like that. If you want to, you might include quarantine emails in with your bounces or with your invalids, because those are lists that, depending on how you tackle it, you might do periodic manual scrubs of. If you have a low volume, high cost of lead, then it makes sense to manual see if somebody mistyped Gmail. If you don't have that automation taken care of by your email sanitation, but this massively simplifies it as well, right? It's not like everybody has to be a mini HubSpot admin and remember what the properties they would need to add to their own list if they are scoping a send or actually creating a send. It's just like, nope. They're if they're opted in to a given list and they are marketing contact, then they are on that list and we send to that list. I don't need to worry about all of the pipes and wires that make it happen. If they are on the bad email list and it's my job, I don't need to worry going to index view and sort everybody or whatever. I can just pull that list up, work through the list. It turns it from a confusing, jumbled mess into every person has 4 or 5 lists from these categories that pertain to their job, and they just have to know what the lists are, right? And then you can collaborate on expanding or refining those lists, but it prevents everyone from having to have a master's degree in the default HubSpot properties, and just in order to figure out how big of an audience they're sending an email to. So that's MECHA.
Yeah, another building block foundational spot in HubSpot where if you spend the time to get this right, it activates pretty much the rest of the portal. Like, so if you're asking, I wish my data was cleaner, or I wish we were getting more out of HubSpot, um, this provides clarity in a way that most other systems will not be able to do that. So even if your data is dirty or there's gaps in it, starting with this structure, and then this will clarify like where the gaps are, because that's where like some of these numbers, as we talked about putting them on a dashboard. And I think one of your examples, I imagine somebody coming back from a trade show, having checked all those boxes at the table, but then it's got to just be, all right, we'll add them to the campaign.
Yep.
And that's how we're going to keep track of this. Like, if you take the time to do a show, like a trade show debrief, and everybody's telling you, you can immediately start to separate people. And, sales teams just looking at the list like, oh, this doesn't sound right. Right. It should be more than that.
Right.
It should be less than that. We should move
Yep.
these around. Right. And it starts to give you great insight into your process.
Yeah.
But I wanted to, I think you'll appreciate the guesses that called me.
Yes. Let's hear it.
'Cause I think like it's all captured. It's just different. It's just out of order. So the M, it said marketing performance, uh, which I think could be communication, if we're thinking about it in that way. Engagement patterns was the E, so engagement activity. C, customer journey stage, so milestones, right?
Mm-hmm.
H, historical behavior. Um, yeah, kind of baked into some of the other ones. And then A was audience profiles. So,
Okay.
yeah, again, the journey stages, where they are at, right?
Yeah.
Audience profiles, arguably customer facing wise, those are the most important ones
Hmm.
that they want you to know. And it's the easiest ones to get wrong, right? And
Yeah.
send the wrong message
Right.
to the wrong person at the wrong time. So not too bad, not too bad. Uh,
Yeah. Well, I'll publish it and we'll try to teach Claude what it should be.
yeah. Um, well, this was enlightening for sure. I've got some. It's definitely given me some ideas. I think it's easy to overthink lists and uh, use it in the way you're describing. Where okay, it's a powerful tool. We know we need to use it to send emails or to activate automations. So you wait till the request comes in, and then you build the list, and you end up seeing these portals where there's just hundreds of lists, and
Yes.
and then that's where like there's so many people that would get value out of this that have asked for data cleanup. And it's like, how do I get these reps to stop making 100 lists a month?
Yeah.
It's like, this is how you do that, right?
Yes. Yeah. You
It's not
provide them the
by
lists they need. That's how.
it's not by changing the permissions. Let me tell you that. Like that's
Yeah.
not
Well, it'll stop them from making lists. It won't stop them
yeah.
from being unhappy.
Yeah. It'll stop them from using the system. That's what it'll stop them from
Yeah.
doing. So yeah, super cool. Thanks so much for sharing the framework today. Um, and I think until next time, uh, get into your lists, look at your data. Sometimes it's just a click of one or two fields. Will get you on the right track here. But find those opportunities and let's grow. Have a great day, everybody.
Bye bye.